Going to your butts.
Let's move on to our main story. Yesterday, the Netherlands, aka Holland, aka the land where no one can sneak up on anyone, held its national election. And normally, that's already more than we'd say about it. But this time, the world was watching.
Somehow, I really doubt that.
Voters are heading to the polls in the Netherlands in what's seen as the first of several elections testing the populist sentiment in Europe.
Turnout was the highest in decades. 82% of voters cast ballots.
Prime Minister Mark Rutte's party has won the country's parliamentary elections. The Prime Minister was able to fend off a fierce challenge from far-right candidate Geert Wilders.
Now look, we don't really care that Prime Minister Mike Gergen won re-election.
There you go.
In fact, that's not even his name. I don't really care. Google it. Most people following the Dutch election were more concerned about the guy who finished second.
To be honest here, almost nobody in the United States was following the Dutch election. The only thing most people know about Holland is the following.
In Holland, you can smoke weed whilst fucking a hooker in front of a cop.
It's not like Holland has any bearing on the social, political or economic situation in the US. So let's not pretend that most people following the election were actually interested in the Netherlands. I bet that most of them were just looking for a polarized situation in which they can root for or against somebody, aka political drama.
The Dutch Party for Freedom candidate Geert Wilders.
Lol, that's not how you pronounce his name. Even the news segment you showed before pronounced it differently. Of course I don't expect an English-speaking person to pronounce the Dutch G as it's supposed to, like but come on man, this is just a misstep you easily could have avoided. Now you just sound like a Belgian kid show.
And it's not hard to see why.
Geert Wilders has been called the Donald Trump of the Netherlands.
A fiercely anti-Muslim, far-right candidate.
Campaigning to curb immigration to the Netherlands from Muslim countries, combating what he calls the Islamization of Europe.
Promised to ban the Quran and close all mosques.
He's compared the Quran to Mein Kampf.
Do I have a problem with Islam? Yes, I do have a problem with Islam. I believe Islam is a violent and dangerous religion and even a retarded culture. But I have nothing against Muslims.
Wow. Just wait until he finds out what religion Muslims are. That dude is gonna be so pissed. Now, as hateful as Wilders' message clearly is,
His message can be hateful at times, but I'm sure you are aware of the fact that the truth is not always as black and white as it seems to be. For example, a lot of gay people live in fear of their lives in the Middle Eastern countries, and there are countries in which people can literally be stoned to death because of cheating. There are always two sides of the same coin, aren't there?
there are many Dutch people who find it appealing because they say A, Muslims are stealing their jobs, and B, they say Muslims are trying to Muslimify the Netherlands. That's a real word. That's why they put their trust in a guy who looks like Christopher Walken when he was a Batman villain.
Good guess, but actually no.
Nobody in the Netherlands is saying that the Muslims are taking their jobs. And Muslimification is a thing in the sense that some countries from the Middle East donate money to the mosques in the Netherlands, which causes the imams to change their interpretation of the Quran, or there is a change in imam altogether. This can potentially lead to the propagation of ideas that are counterintuitive with the values of the West.
And by the way, can I ask a question real quick? What is it with these villains and their hair? Like, they all have the same looking hair. In Holland, it's Geert. In the UK, it's Boris. In the US, it's Trump. Like, people, I don't know if I'm the only one who sees this, but it's obvious. It's obvious what's going on here. We've been invaded by mind-controlling aliens who look like bad hair. That's what it is. It's just aliens that are controlling, like it's happening before our eyes. Like if this was a movie and we were watching ourselves, we'd be like, this movie is, it's obvious. How do they not see it? How do they not know that it's the alien, the hair, they look so different? They look so different, and everyone's like, I don't know, everything seems fine to me. I don't know what's happening. It's the hair, clearly the hair. It's like the Muslims. Like, the hair doesn't even look real. And we're watching the movie. It's like, who are we? It's the aliens. Now, aliens or not, Geert Wilders tapped into a latent racism that many Dutch people possessed. And you can see how successful it was, because even mainstream politicians have changed their message to sound more like Geert.
Thanks to his massive following, he's already pulled this famously tolerant left-wing country to the right. Centrist Prime Minister Mark Rutte is sounding populist notes, taking out newspaper ads saying, act normal or leave.
That's really worrying.
That really depends on the context, doesn't it? What actually happened is the following. There was a military putsch in Turkey, which caused a lot of commotion in the Turkish-Dutch community, after which thousands of people gathered at the Turkish consulate. Everybody at the protest was of course very emotional about the situation, and this energy was channeled into hate when the camera crew of the NOS was attacked after the frustration about the allegedly misrepresentation of Erdogan by the media came to the surface. Later, people celebrated the fact that the putsch didn't work out, and a lot of people declared Erdogan as their true leader. Rutte's remark was tied to the attack on the camera crew. But that isn't the underlying problem, is it? The conflict is about people that live in the Netherlands but are loyal to Turkey. This is of course a minority, but we are still talking about at least 112,000 people that do not feel at home in Holland. This can cause a huge disconnect from society and become apparent in their behavior. However, most Turkish-Dutch citizens have an internal struggle when it comes to loyalty and do not want to choose between the Netherlands or Turkey, because this choice can alienate them from either one. This might be the case for other ethnic groups as well, which can cause a lot of conflict all throughout the country. A little later, the problem became even more apparent when Erdogan wanted to become the head of parliament, which would have given him a lot more power because 1. He can appoint people in parliament and just as easily fire others. 2. He can appoint 4 judges. Now, power is not necessarily a bad thing on its own, but it can be considered a step backwards because this development can threaten the democracy of Turkey. Besides that, it's kinda scary to think about the fact that this process has similarities to how Hitler came to power in Germany. Because every Turkish-Dutch citizen has a passport of both countries, they are technically able to vote in Turkish elections. The Secretary of State of Turkey wanted to hold a referendum in the Netherlands about the changes that would transpire in Turkey. Mark Rutte did not like this idea and stated that public spaces in Holland were not meant for the political campaign of other countries. The Secretary of State of Turkey said that the referendum was allowed because of the freedom of assembly. Rutte responded with the fact that if the campaign would take place, that strict measurements must be taken to ensure everybody's safety. The Secretary of State of Turkey then proceeded to threaten the Netherlands with measurements if his arrival was met with complications, after which the government of the Netherlands denied his access to Holland. In response, Erdogan called the Dutch people nervous, cowardly, and descendants of Nazis and fascists. This is especially painful because of the history of the Netherlands, and it is sadistically ironic that they wanted to campaign in Rotterdam, which was bombed by Nazi Germany. A long story short, another minister from Turkey came to Holland anyway, and was eventually escorted to Germany. This caused a lot of outrage under the Turkish Dutch community, which invoked protests.
Ze gillen nu democratie. Meneer, mag u wat vragen? Want u bent woordvoerder van namens de groep.
Fazla gelmiyoruz bu tarafa doğru.
Een hoop ME eromheen.
Daar is de sfeer wat uitgelaten. Op andere plekken is het wat slimmer. Ik heb al gehoord dat journalisten zich niet zo veilig voelen. Zelf heb ik nergens last van gehad. Ik sta ook in een apart vak momenteel. Ze zeggen hier dat dit de hele avond wel door kan gaan, net zolang dat de Turkse minister dus...
Now you do have the right to protest in the Netherlands, as an extension of the right of freedom of speech. But if you threaten the public order, then it's not allowed anymore, and as the crowd grew bigger, it became total chaos. This caused police to stop the protest, after which the protest turns into riots.
Look at him, he's still going.
And the sad thing is that if I were to grow up in the same environment as the people that were at the protest, I would have acted exactly the same. I'm not trying to paint a picture in which I demonize the Turkish Dutch community, but I'm trying to highlight the dilemma, which is the fact that there is a big divide between some of the citizens of the Netherlands. And it is a little bit simplistic to say that the statement of Rutte was just to gain popularity. Personally, I do not condone the statement, although my gut feeling was to agree with it the first time I heard about the situation. I think this counts for most Dutch citizens because they personally do not cause immigrants any harm or experience the struggles that immigrants do on a daily basis. So when shit starts to get out of hand, it really sounds like these people are ungrateful for the opportunity that has been given to them. But after I looked into this problem, I realized that this divide between people is rooted in discrimination and supplemented by segregation, and goes back to the time when immigrants were imported as workers, after which I changed my mind. That's not to say that immigrants are totally off the hook, because there are a lot of differences between the very conservative culture most immigrants come from and the progressive Western culture in the Netherlands. They are required to conform to our morals, or at least our judicial morals, which is regularly not the case. Besides that, Mark Rutte is not a centrist at all. He's part of the VVD, which is a right-wing party. I don't know where you guys get your facts from.
Now look, just because Wilders lost doesn't mean that the problems that led to his popularity are gone.
But like you said yourself,
I don't really care
about the problem, since you did not even bother to show the true conflict that is taking place.